we shoot for half an hour, and by the way, everybody can hear you right now. There's music playing, but clear, audible. But you know, the beauty is as long as the conversation is helping people and interesting and good, the plot doesn't matter so much. You will have to speak up a little bit. You're getting a little echo in your room. I want to make sure people can hear you. I know what you're going to share is going to be good. So we got, let's see, Facebook is online, Periscope is online, YouTube is online, Twitch is thinking about going online. It's always a little slow. But here we go. Welcome to Life Today. I'm Randy Robinson. Good to have you here today, watching us live or on the replay on all these locations, whichever one you're on. I know the replays are posted there on YouTube and on Facebook, and you can see us on Twitter as well. We're going to have an interesting conversation, you know. There's always a lot of discussion. Hey, Sherry, good to see you again. Chat is open. I'd love to hear from you, and you might want to ask some questions in this one, so be ready with that keyboard. Engaging our culture is always an interesting question. How do we do it? How do we do it effectively? How do we do it without compromise? How do we do it in such a way that will get the attention of a lost world? Paul talked about this. In fact, his message on Mars Hill, where he was speaking to a very secular culture, he made reference to, he was trying to explain the nature of man in God's image, and he said, being then the children of God, we ought not to think that the divine nature is like gold or silver or stone. And he said it's an image formed by the art and thought of man. So we find that art and the ideas of man can shape our view of God. So I've got a couple of gentlemen online with me right now who are using art to try to shape an image of God for a secular world. And of course, Christians can enjoy that too. So Todd Terry and Jarod O'Flaherty are with me. How you guys doing?
Good. Glad to be here.
Doing great.
So give the audience a little bit of an idea of exactly what you have done to engage our culture.
Yeah, I'll go first on that. So we created a streaming television series called Vindication. It's on Amazon Prime right now. It's also on Tubi for streaming. There's some other retailers you can get it through. But it's basically a crime drama series that follows a detective through his spiritual growth journey across 10 episodes. Now, in each episode, he's investigating a crime of some sort, and in those crimes, or the people he's interrogating and talking with, you see the thumbprint of God show up in some form or fashion, and it changes in every episode. And that's part of the appeal of the series, is when you sit down, you never know what that episode is going to hold for you when you look into it. So we put it out there. It's actually in multiple countries as well. There's some distribution going on and overseas and things. So it's just getting out there. Had great feedback on it, and that's what we put together.
So Todd there is the lead character, is that right?
Yeah, I play Detective Gary Travis, and this whole thing started. Jarod and I met probably 2.5, 3 years ago.
Yeah.
At a Christian Media, is it an association?
Christian Media Association.
Christian Media Association group meeting that they had monthly or bi-monthly, and we started talking, and the whole project started off as a short film, just a standalone short film. It won some awards, and then Jarod had the idea of turning it into a series, and then it fleshed out over the next couple of years that way.
Very cool. I'm always interested in the media side of things, so I'm going to ask you a couple of media questions, but then we'll talk a little bit more about the theme and the idea of Vindication. But how hard was it to get a Christian production on Amazon Prime? Because that's a pretty big deal. I know a lot of people that have tried and not been successful. How'd you do it?
Well, we have a distribution partner, co-production partner, who had a history of getting things placed on various streaming services. So they originally shopped it to a handful of others to see where would be the best fit. And when it all came to a conclusion, that search, Amazon was the place that seemed like the best fit. What was nice about it is the audience is just so large there that, there may have been financially another offer somewhere else that, on paper would have looked better, but the number of eyeballs and the number of hearts that it could reach would be substantially lower. So Amazon Prime, with its huge audience, just turned out to be the best option. As far as it being faith-based in nature, there wasn't any pushback on that. The only thing that we've seen is the fact that it has had such a great response from the audience on Prime, yet you can't find it anywhere on their trending or hot new topic dramas or anything like that. It seems buried, even though it's really had a great response as far as user feedback and ratings and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I know that's actually a big deal because I don't normally look for something. I look at what they're kind of advertising, right?
Yeah.
Let's watch a trailer real quick. I want people to get a feel for this. And man, if you have an Amazon Prime account, search for Vindication and find it, and you can watch this series right here.
You're gonna risk your job, everything you work for. I don't want you getting tangled up in this. I don't know if I'll follow the rules.
You know you can't get rid of me that easily.
Come on, seriously.
If the roles were reversed, would you risk it for me?
This is off the record. That means you don't talk about it.
You think he's really gonna show?
He'll show. They always show.
Very cool. So was that August 9th of this year?
Correct. Yeah, that's when it premiered.
Okay, so it's only been out just a few months now.
Yeah, two or three.
Yeah, and in getting good viewership. Do they give you hard numbers on that?
They do. They'll send you back the number of minutes viewed. That's how it's based. So a big thing is the feedback rating that you get on there. Just you can't go create 10 accounts and write feedback. It has to be valid accounts that have spent over $50 on Amazon and that sort of thing. And even like if you're watching on your TV on Amazon Prime, there's no place to write feedback. So you actually have to go on your computer and dig it up. And ours has just received over 150 so far, which may not sound like a lot, but some of their big programs, have 30 or 40 reviews total. So it's done really well there. And that's kind of how we know this has reached a lot of people. And you'll hear people, hey, I was just randomly looking for something to watch. And wow, I sat down in one sitting and watched this whole series.
Yeah, I'm a little guilty in that category of people that sit down and watch something straight through. I'm a binger, so that's really cool. All right, let's talk a little bit about some of the theme. Why the idea of vindication? And also, I just want to note, be careful leaning on your table. You're shaking your camera. There.
It's like Mom
you didn't
said.
You didn't see them, but they both backed off their table real quick. That was kind of funny. Anyways, but this idea of vindication, why is it important, and how is it relevant to everyone, Christians included?
Well, I'll just begin with, in each episode, it's like Jarod said before, it's more of a procedural crime drama with a family element mixed into it. And there's someone that's vindicated in each show, but there's also a personal level of vindication from a spiritual point of view for my character, who's the main character. And it's like you said, I don't know when you said it's more of a slow burn. You see it happening throughout the series. So the thing that I appreciate so much about the series is it's not so much hitting you so hard on the nose that it just slowly, is developed throughout, which is great for character development in general. And I think people appreciate that more than, spelling it out for you.
Yeah, and actually that's an interesting conversation which I've had with some people involved in some films, some major release films. And the way that I think it falls is if you're trying to reach a Christian audience, they appreciate a very overt, evangelistic, Bible quoting approach because they're already there. But if you're trying to reach a less Christian or non-Christian audience, then you do kind of come in with that parable, that story that has a spiritual meaning, but you're literally saying something that is more relatable to them and more physical. And then the Holy Spirit basically has to open up their eyes so that they see the spiritual message behind it. Did you consciously decide to take that that more parable kind of route towards your storytelling?
Yeah, very much think so. I thought of it more of as an organic approach. Let's not try to force it in there and make it artificial. Let's just see what happens. And sometimes in preparing the script for an episode, we'd realize, oh wow, you get 9/10 of the way through this episode before you even realize that there's a faith element to it. And some of the episodes it's not. I'm not gonna say it's not there, but it's so light that you could watch it and not realize it was a faith-based show, but then the next episode follows up on those seeds that were planted, and you go, oh wow, okay, that's why it was there. So yeah, just a very organic approach. We didn't start and say, okay, this episode, each episode we're going to hit one of the 10 commandments. It wasn't like that. Let's tell a story in a universe where God exists and he interacts with people like what we have. With a lot of TV shows and entertainment from Hollywood, that doesn't happen. It's like there is no God. It just life just happens. So let's tell a story in a universe where there is God, the God, and just see where he naturally shows up in people's lives and stories.
Yeah, and I think in a lot of, like you were talking about, a lot of portrayals of Christians and secular things are done in big stereotypes. They're either overly judgmental, or they push them in a way that they're hypocrites, however you want to say it. And so that's what I appreciate about this. It's not just pushing things at you. I mean, Jesus spoke in parables because people sometimes hear better with stories, I think, because they can digest them and they can hit your heart.
Oh, 100%. Are you getting any feedback from people who have been impacted by it? I mean, other than, hey, it's a cool series, it's a great story, are you getting any kind of, wow, this really made me think, or changed my life even kind of thing?
I don't know that it has hit a wide enough audience right now, because it is a lot of the faith people who love it and like, man, I've been waiting for this type of entertainment. The stories that I have heard about that come back to mind are people we worked with on set, because we didn't have this rule that, oh, everyone that works with us has to be a believer. So, if you're there to do the job and do it well and be respectful of everyone, then you can work with us. And there are a lot of stories that came out of that, of people who would start asking questions, or people whose even opinion of Christians and Christ in general changed from working with us, And, I thought, hey, if that's what God intended this to do as far as changing lives while giving some entertainment, then, hey, I'm happy to be there and do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I am totally 100% on board with changing the image of Christians in pop culture, because it's slanderous almost the way that they portray Christians so often. It's actually getting real bad. I was watching football a couple weeks ago, and they were advertising some commercials for some network shows, comedies, and just mocking Christians or God. And I was still surprised, even as kind of as bad as it's gotten in some ways. I was still a little bit surprised, like, really? So just portraying Christians as normal people, and even better as, people who are pursuing a higher purpose, and faults and all, at least striving for a standard that is higher than just whatever somebody thinks is right. So appreciate that. Talk about a little bit about Vindication, what it means to believers and to all people. What is Vindication?
So I can let you speak on it. I spoke a little bit about what it.
Yeah, I'll start. So the way I looked at Vindication as a whole, the term, I don't know if this is the Webster dictionary definition of it, but I looked at someone who, for all practical purposes, looks guilty, or they even are guilty, but something happens, something changes to where that person is found innocent. Now, obviously, in the criminal world, you have a person where the evidence or the circumstances make them look guilty, and then something vindicates them, a piece of evidence, someone comes forward on their behalf, whatever. In the Christian faith, obviously, we're all guilty of sin before God. It's not an appearance. We actually are guilty. But then that change happens with Christ, covered by the blood, and you're found innocent, in spite of all that. And that's where your vindication, our vindication before God, happens through Christ. Mm-hmm. So I love the fact that you have that double meaning there of how it can apply to the criminal world, but then also to faith, or to the spiritual side. and our relationship with God and how we could work with that throughout the series.
And that we can be redeemed, but we still can suffer the consequences of whatever that is.
What exactly do you mean by that? Go into that a little bit more, because that a lot of people think that, oh, if I just, once Christ covers me, I mean, some consequences are gone, but you're saying that not all of them are?
Well, yeah, in general. I mean, I can just look at my own life, kind of the wreckage of the past where I came from. I was saved by Christ, and I felt different. I saw things differently, but it's not that my past just went away all of a sudden. You can still, the best example I can give is, to get into the current day situations, is the Amber Geiger trial. I don't know if you followed that at all.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and most of America saw that when he forgave her on the deal. It's not that her consequences went away. She's going to jail, but I don't know, if she accepted salvation or asked Jesus into her heart, what she did, but it's that kind of thing. There's grace there to cover things, but sometimes our consequences remain. But Jesus sustains us throughout.
Yeah, that's actually a real good example. And for people outside our area, the Dallas-Fort Worth area, that may not know, a police officer went into what she thought was her apartment, was actually one floor above, I think, or below, one floor off. Some of the apartments, they all look the same, so I get that, and a lot of people do that. I've actually done that. But she walked into the wrong apartment, and there was a gentleman sitting on the couch, and she shot him, which we can go into the details of that. To me, seems like a really rash reaction. But given the state of being a police officer, it's so vilified. I can imagine that they're always on guard. But anyway, so she shot him and killed him, and she ended up being convicted of murder. Is in prison now. But at the trial, an amazing thing happened. And I think this is where people heard of it. They heard of this because Botham Jean was the gentleman that was shot and killed, and his brother Brant, I believe was his name.
Yeah, Brant
John. He came out and forgave her at the trial, where the victim's family has a chance to speak up after the trial's basically over. He forgave her, and it was not just your everyday forgiveness, if I can say that. It was amazing. I mean, I haven't seen anything like that in a long time, and so he just shared the love of God with her right there, and she broke down, and she was sobbing through the whole trial. It's not someone who appeared to have a murderous intent, but the judge. Did you hear this part? What the judge did?
Yeah, the judge gave her a Bible. I believe she asked if she wanted one. I think she took it, and the judge got a bunch of
a bunch of flack for that.
Yeah, I know, but that was such a gracious thing. And I guess that's what I was getting at, is the grace that we can receive that can break your heart and turn you to Christ. Doesn't mean the consequences necessarily go away.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so she's in prison, and hopefully she has found Christ already, or will very soon. And certainly she saw an example of it in the courtroom, and has now her own Bible, thanks to a smart judge, in my opinion. Right.
Yeah, one thing to add to that, at the end of him offering forgiveness, basically from the witness stand there, he turned to the judge and said, "I don't know if this is allowed, but can I give her a hug?" And there's kind of a pause, and then he was like, "Please, can I do this?" And the judge granted it, and he kind of stood up. And the guilty woman, the police officer, she didn't just kind of walk up, she ran to him.
Oh, wow.
And squeezed a hold of him. And I just thought, what a picture for us when we receive forgiveness.
Amen.
Yeah.
She ran to him and just clung on to him in that situation.
Yeah, and really, anyone who knows how guilty they are in sin, when they're offered forgiveness, you'll want to run. And that's the beauty of what Christ offers every single one of us. And not just at the point of salvation, but ongoing, because we continue to fall, and he continues to stand there going, get back up, come on, I've got something for you, I've got a plan for your life. So it's beautiful. Do you have any other things in the works for the future?
Both of us would love to do a season 2, and I think the audiences who have watched it, that's like the number one response. When do I get to see season 2? Not too many spoilers, but his character does go on a spiritual journey and comes to a point at the conclusion of the season that very much leaves an open door to, well, what happens next? How is his life changed? How is the way he approaches criminal investigations going to be different? And people around him, family members, coworkers, also have gone on a journey, but it's not to the point of a conclusion. So, I mean, we would love to see more, but the way that's going to happen is, people watching it and telling others about it.
And another thing I wanted to just say about the show in general is that it doesn't shy away from hard topics. It's going to hit hard topics that you would see in any crime drama, but it's not gratuitous. So, I could sit my 13-year-old with me and watch the show and not be afraid what's going to pop up on screen. So that's what I appreciate about it as well.
You're saying it's not Dexter?
It's not that. Not at all.
Not that I've ever seen that. I've just heard about it.
Yeah.
Right. Do you have any advice? I'm sure that some budding, do we even call you guys filmmakers anymore? Because everything goes to video these days. That seems to be where it's at. Producers, actors. Do you have any advice for anyone that is like, I feel like I'm called to affect the culture in that way, in that medium? Any tips you can give them having gone through it successfully?
You go first,
Yeah.
Todd. There are a lot of actors out there that want to have the, stat sheet that he has and where he is at in his career, and they always want to know. So, what's your advice?
Well, I'm trying to think. So I became an actor before becoming a believer, and then I became a believer. So I had been acting, and I, came to a point where I said, what am I willing to do and what I'm not willing to do? And so I've had to make that decision on a case-by-case basis. And I've got lots of great stories that, show the grace of God within that. Even when I feel like I've made a bad decision on a project that I was like, maybe I shouldn't have done that. But, I would just say if you're a believer and you are, in this career, you're going to do what you do in your normal life and your work. You want to study. You want to get around people that are going to edify you and build you up. I'm always happy to talk to people. I don't necessarily want to give a phone number on here, but
No, don't do that.
But I can say I'm on Instagram at Todd Terry Actor. If somebody wanted to reach out that way, I'm happy to chat with you if you're looking to get into this. It's a challenging business because you're constantly interviewing and you're constantly getting rejected.
Right.
So you have to want to do it. But I would just say, study, reach out to me if you want to, and happy to share my experience.
Jarod?
Yeah, I'll say from the filmmaking side, nobody gets to go out and make their first film or TV show and it be the next Marvel superhero movie or the next Breaking Bad or whatever.
You're shattering expectations here. Come on.
Yeah, that doesn't happen. You start with a 30-second film you make on your phone,
Mm-hmm.
And then the next one is a 1-minute thing you make on your phone. And you just start that with that. For me, I didn't get to go, hey, I'm making an Amazon series, It started 15 years ago, shooting camp videos and things of that nature. So you start small and know it's a journey, but you have to be doing something. Don't just have ideas. Don't just, I want to do. No, go do something, no matter how small it is, and then just continually grow from there to get it where you want to be.
Be faithful in the small things. That's scriptural.
Absolutely. And you have no idea how fortunate you are to start on an iPhone. I started on 16 millimeter film, shooting canisters on a Bolex, and then scraping and literally cementing the work print together. So for the creatives out there today, you have it better than ever. So take advantage of it, right?
That's true.
Todd, I want to ask you, you mentioned that you weren't a believer when you first started acting and then you became a Christian. Tell me about that. What happened?
Well, I was brought up in the church, and then I went way off and went into all sorts of new age, and that's kind of God was everything. And then I started going to a Bible study back in, I don't remember dates real well, but it was probably in the mid-'90s. And this pastor just spoke to my heart in a way that I'd never heard the gospel before, and it may not work for everybody, and I know, but he really emphasized God's grace, but how wicked we were, and I just so related to that because my wickedness, I that's all I could focus on, and so that set me free. That God loved me despite what I'd done, how I am, and all that, and that gradually just brought me into freedom. So that was probably back in the mid '90s.
How did that impact your work choices after that?
Well, pretty broadly because there was a lot of things I turned down that I just felt like no, the spirit inside me said no.
Yeah.
So, and sometimes I struggled with it. Sometimes
Yeah, that's got to be hard. I mean, an actor, you take whatever you can get, right?
oh, I made bad decisions, and I got married, several years after that, and I made some decisions that, were a struggle between my wife and I because it was on film projects that I just felt like this is not good, spiritually uplifting in any way. But we've grown through it. I've been married 22 years. My wife's an actress, and it's been great because we grow together in the midst of it.
I tell you what, that's a powerful statement right there about marriage and about pursuing what you believe God wants you to do and not giving in to maybe some temptations of opportunities.
Right.
And to hear you say, I'm still married. Our relationship's great. We've walked through it together. That's huge. We need people to walk through life with us.
Yeah. She's
Very
great.
cool. Well, I appreciate you guys tuning in today. Want everyone to go watch Vindication on Amazon Prime. If you're not on Amazon Prime and you want to find another way to view it, I find the easiest way, I'm assuming this is true with you guys, if you go to IMDb, Internet Movie Database, and look up Vindication, it'll tell you all the ways that you can find it. Or it's probably on your website too.
Yeah, it's actually out on DVD as well, the whole series, which you can get on Target, Walmart, Best Buy,
Really?
their online stores. You can find it there as well.
I'd have to go out and buy a DVD player to go with it. Right? It's getting to that point in our culture. Well, cool.
But you can choose either.
Yeah, okay. Sounds good. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate what you're doing. I encourage everyone to go see Vindication. Vindication's out right now. Go watch it. Go watch it and then go tell people about it because that's how we help fellow believers in this business find more success. Great, guys. I want to follow up with you after our wrap up here. So I'm going to hang up with you and then I'm going to call you back in about 5 minutes.
Good.
Sound good?
Yep.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
I want to just bring this back for you guys that are out there watching, and I appreciate everybody on Facebook, YouTube. Again, here's all the places where you can see us. What I want to wrap up with is we have a calling to reach culture. We're not to be isolated. Now, maybe for a period of time, God will isolate you in a monastery or something for your own benefit. But our ultimate, what Jesus did with his disciples, see, he spent time with them very closely for, we believe, about three and a half years. And then he sent them out into the world. And that's why I wanted to talk to these guys today, because they are believers. You can see what God has done there in Todd's life in particular. And then he's sending them out into the world to carry a message. What is that message? Well, it's ultimately the message of the gospel. Because, I mean, for these guys, that's what vindication is. This is that Christ took our place on the cross, and we don't have to suffer the consequences and get everything we deserve, which is great news, right? And so I just encourage you to go, okay, where am I at? Now, your culture may be where you go to work, you know. Some of you may be thinking, man, I just wished I was able to work in the ministry full time or something like that, or work around more believers, or maybe I'm just struggling because I'm the only Christian at work or at my school or whatever. But you need to understand that there is a season for going into the world, to being the light in that darkness, to shine the truth of God's word, and to share his grace. I've talked a lot about Jesus coming with grace and truth. You know, grace is what gets you into those sinners' world, where you're not, running and screaming at them, telling them they're all going to hell. but relating to them. See, and that's what these guys do through their series. They come in with a crime story because people go, okay, I can relate to that. I'm a CSI fan, I'm a whatever fan. And so I can relate to watching this crime story. That's the grace. And then they come in with truth, this idea of vindication. What does it mean to be vindicated? And how do we find that in our lives? How does this character find it? Right? And so then the lights, you're shining that light. And that light starts to go on in people's head. And it makes them dig a little deeper. And that's where we get people to the gospel. So appreciate all you guys hanging out with me. And Todd and Terry and Jarod, rather. Because I think it's important that as we grow together, as we study, as we grow in our faith spiritually, that we put that faith into action. We put feet to our faith, and we go out and we change the culture. That is our mission. That's our time here on earth. Isn't strictly about us. It's about being a part of God's plan to spread his kingdom to the very ends of the earth, to all the earth. And you have a very important part of that, and it is engaging the culture for Christ. So think about that. Ask God, how am I to engage the culture I'm in? And it may not be as cool as an Amazon Prime series, God is in the mundane. It may be as cool as talking to that person that sits next to you at work or at school or wherever you're at, wherever God's placed you. Wherever God's placed you is where he's placed you. So be confident in that and go out and change the culture. See you again next time. Appreciate you hanging out. Life Today Live, watching on all these locations and sharing it. If you enjoy it, share it.